I never planned on becoming an entrepreneur. I wanted stability, a 401k, and maybe a dog named something dumb like Ravioli. But life has a way of sucker punching your plans. I'm 33 now, the founder of a weirdly successful business that started as a lie and ended up paying off my parents' mortgage. Here's how that happened. 4 years ago, I was living in a one-bedroom apartment in Houston with a roommate who was attempting to become a TikTok chef. Our place constantly smelled like burnt butter or failed sourdough experiments. I was working in customer service for a mid-tier SaaS company that gave us pizza on Fridays and mental breakdowns on Mondays. I hated it. I'd always been the kind of person who knew just enough about everything. I could write code, but badly. I could design, but only if the user didn't mind every button being off-center. I had started and killed about 6 side projects by then. None had ever made a dime. One night, after a particularly cruel Zoom call where a client called me the digital equivalent of a vending machine that eats your dollar, I decided I was done. I rage applied to jobs, wrote terrible cover letters, and then did something ridiculous. I tweeted a screenshot of a fake dashboard that looked like it came from a profitable SaaS product. I gave it a name, Noted. It looked like a minimalist note-taking app for teams. The caption was, bootstrapped to $12,000 MRR in 4 months. Built solo. Sleep-deprived but proud. It was a lie. There was no app. There was no revenue. Just a well-edited screenshot and my frustration. That tweet blew up. Overnight, I got hundreds of likes, DMs from other founders, emails asking for interviews, even an offer from an angel investor. Panic set in. I had 3 choices: delete the tweet and admit I lied, ignore it and let it die, or build the damn thing for real. So I built it. For the next 4 weeks, I coded 16 hours a day. I taught myself front-end frameworks I'd never touched. I watched tutorials at 2x speed. I used my roommate's expired Adobe subscription to make it look presentable. By the end of the month, I had a janky but usable MVP. The first users were curious founders who had seen the tweet. They signed up. They gave feedback. I fixed bugs at 3 a.m. A founder in the Netherlands offered to pay $10 per month to use it with his remote team. I added Stripe that same night. Then something unexpected happened. It turned out Noted solved a real problem. Most team-based note apps were too bloated or ugly or required onboarding manuals. Mine was dead simple. Shared notes with Markdown, version history, and Slack integration. That was it. Within 2 months, I had 500 users and about 120 paying customers. I still hadn't told anyone the truth about the tweet. I quit my job, made a LinkedIn post with lots of buzzwords, and went full-time on Noted. Revenue hit $4,000 MRR. My roommate celebrated by making entrepreneur pancakes, which were just pancakes with protein powder. But here's where the story takes a weird turn. A larger productivity app company reached out. They wanted to explore synergies. I knew what that meant. They wanted to buy or crush me. I was terrified but curious. I took the call. Their offer, a low 6-figure acquisition or a partnership with a distribution deal. I declined both, heart pounding. I had a gut feeling I hadn't had before. Noted could be big. So I doubled down. I hired a contract developer to clean up my mess of code. A designer friend helped with UX. I built out analytics, added custom domains, and launched a referral program. It worked. By the end of year 1, I was making $14,000 MRR. Real this time. Somewhere around month 15, I finally came clean publicly. I wrote a blog post titled, How a Lie Built My Startup. I was brutally honest about the fake tweet, the guilt, and the work it took to make the lie real. I expected backlash. Instead, it went viral. Turns out, people love a redemption arc. I got more signups from that post than from any product launch. Investors reached out again, but this time with bigger checks. I stayed bootstrapped. Fast forward to now. Noted has over 8,000 paying users. MRR is over $70,000. I've hired 4 people full-time. My parents, who used to email me job postings weekly, now brag about me at church. I paid off their mortgage last Christmas and cried on the porch like I was in a movie. The best part? I don't have to lie anymore. I get to build things for a living. I get emails from users telling me Noted helped them start their own companies. That blows my mind every time. If you're reading this, wondering whether you should start something, do it. But maybe skip the fake tweet. That part sucked. And yeah, I did get the dog. His name is Ravioli. He's a menace. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. LacedAgain. I posted before and after shots of my restorations. I messaged influencers. I DMed 100 people a day with offers. For the first month, I got laughed at, blocked, ignored. But follower number 287 was a collector in New York who bought 3 pairs and posted them, tagging me. By month 3, I had 2,300 followers and orders from 13 states. That's when I got cocky. I decided to scale. I hired 2 high school kids from my neighborhood to help me clean shoes. I rented a 300 square foot office space. I maxed out my credit card on tools, packaging, and a photo setup. Everything was going well, until it wasn't. One of the kids left a pair of $400 Yeezys next to a heater overnight. The glue melted. I refunded the customer and took the loss. A supplier sent me a batch of fake Air Maxes I didn't catch in time. 3 refund requests later, my Instagram trust score tanked. A PayPal dispute froze my account for 18 days. I was $7,800 in debt, and it was all happening again. The stress, the burnout, the quiet dread I saw in my dad's face every Sunday night. Then came the day I met Aaron. He was a customer who'd bought a restored pair of Dunks and messaged me asking how I got such clean toe boxes. We started chatting. Turns out, he was a materials engineer who worked with polyurethane compounds. I told him about my acetone water leather conditioner mix. He said, "You're wasting time. I could help you make something 10x better." We started experimenting. Over 3 months, working in my garage and his kitchen, we created a sneaker restoration solution that worked better than anything I'd ever used. Clean suede, canvas, leather. No discoloration. Minimal smell. I made a label, took some photos, called it Fresh Step, and put 10 bottles on Etsy. They sold out in 2 days. So I made 50. Gone in a week. I emailed every sneaker YouTuber I could find. One of them, a guy named Kicksman Tony, shout out Tony, featured my cleaner in a tutorial that got 110K views. Suddenly, my inbox was full. Shops wanted to stock it. Customers asked for bigger bottles. And for the first time, I stopped restoring shoes and started selling something scalable. I formed an LLC. Aaron came on as a 30% partner. We reinvested every cent for 6 months. Rented a tiny production studio. Sourced packaging in bulk. I built a Shopify store and ran my first Facebook ad campaign with a $500 budget. That ad made $200 in a weekend. We broke even by month 7. Profitable by month 10. 1 year in, Fresh Step had cleared $180K in sales. I had my first full-time employee, and we were in 4 regional sneaker shops. I paid off my debt, upgraded my mom's car, and for the first time in my life, didn't feel like a loser trying to play business. But there's a moment that sticks with me. I was back in my hometown for Thanksgiving. My dad, who hadn't said much about my whole venture except the occasional, "You being careful with taxes?" walked into the kitchen while I was on my laptop processing orders. He poured coffee, sat down, and said, "You made this thing from nothing, huh?" I nodded. He looked at the screen, the dozens of orders, the bottle mock-ups. He said, "I ran a store for 30 years. Couldn't ever get it to grow. You're smarter than I was." I didn't know what to say. This was the man who woke up at 5 a.m. every day and came home with cracked hands and tired eyes. And he was proud of me? That was the moment I realized something. Entrepreneurship isn't about flashy launches or exit strategies. It's about betting on yourself when no one else will. It's about burning your boats and figuring out how to swim with no map. Today, Fresh Step ships internationally. We're working on sneaker wipes, odor tablets, and a sneaker laundry service. I still get my hands dirty. I still reply to customer emails. But now I wake up with purpose. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I'm damn glad I became one. 6 years ago, I was 29, broke, sleeping in my car behind a strip mall gym, and Googling how to make passive income without money. Now I own a company with 47 employees. We cleared $8.2 million in revenue last year, and I still don't own a house. Let me tell you why. I wasn't always down and out. I used to be a project manager at a large construction firm. I made decent money, had a nice apartment in Phoenix, and even got engaged. Then my dad died. I flew back home to Michigan for the funeral, stayed a little longer than I should have to help my mom, missed some deadlines, and got fired a week after I came back. I thought, no big deal. I've got savings. I'll get another job. Except, I didn't. Construction was in a slump. My fiancée left me 2 months later. My lease ended. I stayed in a motel for a while. Then I was in my car. I had no idea what I was doing. I applied to every job imaginable. I'd show up to interviews with 3-day-old stubble, trying to pretend I wasn't living out of a 2004 Honda Civic. I started driving Uber and delivering pizzas. I even sold plasma a few times just to make it through the week. One night, around 2 a.m., I parked behind the gym I had a $10 membership to, my only real luxury, and searched how to make passive income without money. I was desperate. YouTubers told me to start affiliate marketing or print-on-demand businesses, but I had zero design skills. Others pushed dropshipping. But every success story sounded like it came from someone who already had $10,000 to burn. I didn't. Then I found a forum post about digital asset flipping. The idea was simple: buy underpriced digital products, like website templates, UI kits, logos from designers, and resell them on more popular platforms. Arbitrage, basically. The person in the post said they started with $200. I had $41, but I also had time. So I started emailing small-time graphic designers on Fiverr and Behance. I offered them $20 for non-exclusive licenses to anything they weren't using. Some ignored me. Some said no. But one guy from Serbia said yes. He had a folder of unused ebook templates. Clean, minimalist, very Apple Store energy. I paid him $25 for 15 of them. I listed them on Etsy and Gumroad. I figured nothing would come of it. Then, 4 days later, I made my first sale. $12.99. That dopamine hit changed my life. Within a month, I'd made $489. I reinvested everything. I bought more designs, bundled them, split-tested titles, played with thumbnails. I started waking up at 5 a.m. in my car, using the gym's Wi-Fi to upload files, and working until lunch. By month 3, I was clearing around $900 per month. Still driving Uber, still living in my Civic, but I felt like I had found something. The real breakthrough came when I realized nobody was making templates for very niche industries. I'm talking dog trainers, mobile car detailers, funeral homes. I emailed a few owners pretending to be a client, just to see what their booking forms, brochures, and websites looked like. Most were terrible. So I hired a freelance designer from Indonesia for $60 to make a funeral service business starter kit. It had a logo, a brochure, a one-page website template, and a business card. I listed it on Etsy for $39.99. It sold 5 copies in a week. I rinsed and repeated this for 6 months. By the end of the year, I was making $3,200 per month. I moved into a shared apartment with 2 roommates. It felt like a mansion. Here's where it gets crazy. One of my early customers, some guy in Florida, asked if I could customize a plumber kit with his info. I did it for $20. Then another guy asked for the same. I realized I was doing cheap, fast branding work for small businesses. So I put together a basic site, locallaunchpro.com, still hate the name, and started cold emailing plumbers, roofers, mechanics. Most ignored me. Some told me to screw off. But a few said yes. I charged $199 for a brand kit, logo, one-page website, business card, flyer. My freelance designers did the heavy lifting. I pocketed $120 per sale. After 3 months, I hired my first VA in the Philippines. Then a second. They handled outreach. I was getting 3 to 4 clients a day. By the time COVID hit, I was doing $20,000 per month in revenue. And then it exploded. Everyone went online. Restaurants, therapists, dog walkers. People needed websites. I turned my little kits into instant branding packs and created tiered pricing $199 for $199, $999. I hired more designers, developers, a support team. By mid-2021, we were a team of 15, remote only, doing $180,000 per month. We got featured in a small business newsletter, then TechCrunch ran a piece on us. Overnight, I had investors emailing me. I turned all of them down. I'm not a genius. I don't code. I don't pitch VCs. I don't even wear nice clothes. But I knew one thing. I built this by solving boring problems for boring businesses. And boring businesses don't need $10 million in funding. They need someone who actually answers emails and gets things done on time. Today, Local Launch Pro has 47 employees. We've built brand kits for over 19,000 small businesses. My co-founder, that designer from Serbia, moved to the US, and we now run the company together. I gave him 15% equity. Here's the weird part. I still live in a rented apartment. No Lambo. No Rolex. I drive a 2017 Tacoma. I guess part of me is still that guy in the Civic, Googling how to make passive income without money. The internet is full of advice from people who made it big doing things most of us can't replicate. What nobody tells you is that there's real money in boring stuff. Helping people get their logos right. Writing clear product descriptions. Making business cards that don't look like trash. Nobody brags about it, but that's where the gold is. Don't try to be the next Steve Jobs. Be the guy who builds digital starter kits for HVAC guys in Ohio. There's a fortune in unsexy. I started my first real business on accident while trying to scam my landlord. Let me back up. I was 25, broke, working at a coffee shop, and renting a half-finished attic in a house owned by a guy I'll call Dennis. Dennis was one of those absentee landlords who'd do anything to avoid actually fixing anything. The ceiling had exposed beams, the toilet leaked, and the stairs to my place were technically a ladder. I had just been fired from my side gig, delivering groceries, after accidentally mixing up 2 orders. So now I was down to 22 hours a week at the cafe, with no savings and a rent increase looming. That's when I decided to pull off a dumb little plan. Dennis never came around. Ever. So I figured I'd sublet my place on Airbnb for a few days a week, sleep at my friend's place, and pocket the difference. Rent was $600. I could get $100 a night easy. 3 nights a week, and I was living for free. The first weekend I listed it, I got booked. Some couple from Montreal. I cleaned like crazy, lit candles to mask the plumbing smell, and threw a blanket over the water stain on the ceiling. I stayed at my buddy Marco's and forgot about it. They left a glowing review. So did the next guest. By week 3, I had it rented 5 nights a week and was making more than I made at the cafe. I quit my job. By month 2, I was fully booked. Dennis didn't notice or didn't care. I started buying better towels and fake plants to keep up the ratings. Then one guest messaged me, "Hey, are you available to host long-term corporate stays? I need 3 places for 2 months." I didn't have 3 places. I had 1 glorified crawl space. But I said yes. I told her the other 2 were being cleaned, and I'd have them ready in 2 weeks. I spent the next 10 days scouring Craigslist for similar spaces, negotiating month-to-month rentals from clueless landlords. I found 2 shoddy units with flexible leases and signed both. I furnished them with Facebook Marketplace fines and credit card points. I listed all 3 under different names, used different themes, and created cleaning crews with made-up contact emails, all mine. They booked. All 3. For 8 weeks. I cleared $11,000 after expenses. So I scaled. By that December, I was running 7 properties. All low cost, all rented midterm to corporate clients or Airbnb digital nomads. I still didn't technically own anything. I was arbitraging leases. But it worked. I called it Urban Nest Rentals and made a website. Paid a designer on Fiverr $200 to make a logo that looked like something you'd see on a meditation app. I automated cleaning using a local service and hired a college kid named Trevor to help with turnovers and guest messaging. By year 2, I was managing 17 units across 3 cities. Here's where it got weird. My margins were solid, but my stress levels were through the roof. I was constantly worried about landlords finding out, cities changing Airbnb laws, or guests throwing raggers. I started asking myself, what if I owned just 1 place outright? What if instead of juggling all this, I built something long-term? So I sold all my furniture assets in one go, Facebook Marketplace again, and exited 11 leases when the pandemic hit. I negotiated out of the rest, took a hit, but walked away with about $90,000 net. I used that money to buy my first duplex in a small city with lax zoning laws. Lived in 1 unit, rented out the other short-term. Renovated it with YouTube tutorials and elbow grease. Got it appraised higher. Refined. Pulled out cash. Bought another property. 3 years later, I now own 12 units across 4 properties. I no longer do short-term rentals. I lease fully furnished apartments to traveling nurses and tech workers on 3 to 6 month contracts. My business has a waiting list. All legit. Here's the kicker. Last month, I bumped into Dennis at a hardware store. He didn't recognize me at first. Said he just sold the house with the attic to some investor who paid in cash. I laughed and said, "Congrats," but inside I was losing it. That investor was me. I bought it under an LLC, fixed it up, finished the attic properly, turned it into a legal triplex, and now rent each unit $4/1, $500 a month. Sometimes I walk up the stairs, real stairs now, not a ladder, and just stand in the space where it all started. Not bad for a scam that was supposed to last one weekend. I started my first business when I was 11, selling candy out of my backpack in middle school. It sounds like a cliche, but that hustle shaped everything. I'd buy bulk packs from Costco, sneak them past the assistant principal, and sell at a markup during lunch. Eventually, I got suspended for it, but I also saved up $600. That was my first taste of entrepreneurship, and I never lost the itch. Fast forward to 2020. I was 27, living in a crappy one-bedroom apartment in Cincinnati, working as a freelance UX designer after getting laid off. I'd gone to school for design, then worked at a couple of startups, nothing glamorous, just enough to get experience. When the pandemic hit, I lost my job and scrambled to make ends meet on Upwork and Fiverr, designing websites and mobile apps for people who barely knew what they wanted. One day, I took on a client who wanted a basic prototype for a virtual business card app. Something sleek where people could tap phones or scan a QR code to share their info. Nothing revolutionary. But while I was mocking up his design, I kept thinking, why hasn't anyone nailed this yet? I did a little research. There were digital business card apps out there, but they were clunky, ad-ridden, or poorly designed. Most people still handed out paper cards at networking events. It felt outdated, especially during COVID. I started thinking, what if I made a beautiful, frictionless digital business card app that worked seamlessly with NFC and QR and actually looked good? So, I did. Over the next 4 months, I worked nights and weekends on an MVP. I called it LinkUp. It was dead simple. Create a profile, generate a QR code, or use a custom NFC card we mailed you, and boom, you could share your contact info, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever, in one tap. I used my design chops, hired a guy from Pakistan off Upwork for the backend, and got a basic version running by January 2021. I posted it on Product Hunt. It flopped. Crickets. Like 50 upvotes and a couple of sarcastic comments. But I kept going. I printed 500 NFC cards with the LinkUp logo, set up a Shopify store, and started messaging people on LinkedIn, marketers, salespeople, recruiters, anyone who attended events or conferences. My pitch was simple: ditch your paper cards. Go digital. COVID safe, cooler, more memorable. I sold 7 cards that first week, then 12 the next, then 40. I made $1, 200 in the first month, not a lot, but it felt like a spark. The real turning point came in March 2021. A TikTok influencer who reviews cool tech gadgets messaged me asking for a free sample. I was skeptical, but I sent it. A week later, he posted a 30-second video of him using the card at a coffee shop, linking to his Instagram and business email in one tap. It blew up. 3 million views. 25,000 likes. My Shopify dashboard exploded. I sold out of cards in 48 hours. I stayed up 3 nights in a row ordering more inventory, answering emails, and trying to figure out how to scale. I brought on my younger cousin, a logistics nerd, to help with fulfillment. My girlfriend took over customer service. We worked out of my apartment, shipping hundreds of packages a day. By July, we crossed $100K in revenue. That's when I realized this wasn't a side hustle anymore. I incorporated as LinkUp Technologies LLC, found a real fulfillment partner in Chicago, and started taking things seriously. Of course, with growth came problems. First, the app started crashing under load. My $15/hour backend dev was doing his best, but it wasn't built for scale. I had to rebuild the backend from scratch, hire a real developer, $90/hour this time, and migrate all our users. That cost me nearly $20K and a month of lost sleep. Second, competitors started popping up. Big names. One company raised $3M in seed funding and had a flashy launch with influencer partnerships. I panicked. But then I looked at their app. It was bloated, slow, and tried to do too much. I stayed focused on simplicity and usability. That became our edge. Third, I hit a wall with customer acquisition. TikTok virality wasn't reliable. Paid ads were expensive and hit or miss. So I tried something different: B2B sales. I emailed 100 HR directors and offered custom link-up cards for their entire team. Digital business cards that matched their branding. I closed my first deal with a 30-person marketing agency in Atlanta /$2, 700 in one shot. Then a 75-person real estate brokerage. Then a tech recruiting firm. I hired a small sales team, mostly college interns hungry for commission, and trained them to pitch to HR and events departments. By Q4 of 2021, we had 70-plus companies using LinkUp across their organizations. In 2022, we did $860,000 in revenue. I moved into a real office, hired full-time devs, a head of marketing, a designer, and 2 sales leads. I gave my cousin and girlfriend equity. They'd stuck with me since the beginning. We expanded into Europe, built out more integrations, like syncing with Salesforce and HubSpot, and launched custom card designs with company logos laser engraved. But it wasn't all up and to the right. Supply chain issues in early 2023 delayed our card shipments by 2 months. Customers were pissed. I spent hours on apology calls, and we refunded nearly $30,000 in orders. We also had a security scare, a misconfigured API that exposed some user data. We caught it fast, disclosed it publicly, and fixed it within 48 hours, but the trust damage lingered. Still, we kept building. By the end of 2023, we crossed $1.5 million in revenue. Today, LinkUp has 14 full-time employees, 300-plus corporate clients, and over 60,000 users. We're profitable. We haven't raised any money, and we don't plan to. I like owning the company. I like sleeping at night. Sometimes I still look at our original MVP, saved on my old laptop, a clunky little web app with a QR code and 5 buttons. That thing changed my life. People ask me all the time, what's the secret? There isn't one. I just saw a gap, stayed obsessed with fixing it, and didn't quit when it got hard. That's it. Oh, and I still carry one of our original NFC cards in my wallet. Not because I need it, but because it reminds me what's possible with $600, a cheap laptop, and a stubborn belief that I could build something better. I was 29, broke, and living in a 400-square-foot apartment in a city where people left $10 coffees half-finished. I had $183 in my bank account and a garage full of tools I didn't know how to use. The last startup I tried to launch, a subscription box for eco-friendly grooming kits, had crashed hard. Like, not even a single subscription hard. But failure has a weird way of rewiring your brain. You stop caring about embarrassment. You start caring about what actually works. This story isn't about becoming a millionaire overnight. It's about what happens when desperation meets obsession, and how I accidentally built a 7-figure cleaning business, all because I needed to clean one couch. It started with my neighbor's dog. She had this enormous golden retriever named Maple who loved to leap on my second-hand sectional anytime I left the sliding door cracked. One day, I came back from work and it looked like someone had tried to stuff a golden sheep into the cushions. There was fur everywhere, and the couch smelled like wet joy. I looked into professional upholstery cleaners, but the quotes were insane, $200 to $350 for a single couch. On Reddit, someone mentioned that if you rented an extractor from a hardware store and used an enzyme-based cleaner, you could get pro-level results on your own. So I tried it. It took me 4 hours. But the result? The couch looked new. And not better than before new. I mean showroom, high-end furniture store new. I posted a before and after photo on my IG story, just out of pride. I had less than 200 followers. Still, 3 people messaged me asking how much I'd charge to clean their couch. I didn't even know what to say. But when someone offers you money to do something you just did for free, you don't overthink it. You say yes and figure it out later. I charged $75 for the first job. Brought the rented extractor, a couple bottles of cleaner, and a Target bucket full of scrub brushes. The client, a single mom, tipped me $20 and told me I should raise my prices. I didn't believe her. By my 4th couch, I realized I wasn't running a side hustle. I was building a business. I branded it, Revive. Simple. Clean. I built a barebones Wix site in 2 days. Then I started posting TikToks, couch cleaning time-lapse with ASMR sounds, satisfying gunk extractions, dog-stained cushions becoming pristine. Within a month, one of the videos hit 1.2 million views. I went from 5 couch jobs a month to 28. I had no idea how to scale. I was still using a rented extractor. So I applied for a credit card, bought my own unit for $1,100, and started training my roommate to help out on weekends. We did two-person jobs, one to clean, one to film. People love the videos. There's something deeply addictive about watching filth disappear in high definition. I leaned in hard. Every time we did a job, we'd find a new angle: pet stains, wine spills, kid disasters. I started naming the messes like episodes: the red wine massacre, couch versus chocolate milk. By month 4, I was averaging $6,000 a month in revenue. Still undercharging, still scrappy. But word was spreading. Local realtors asked us to clean before open houses. A small furniture store offered us referral deals. I built a booking system on Squarespace and added an online quote form. Then came the big one. An influencer with 900K followers DM'd me for a cleaning. She had a white sectional that looked like it had survived a toddler apocalypse. I did it for free, cleaned the couch, detailed her ottoman, and left a branded thank you note. She posted a 2-minute reel. My website crashed. Bookings tripled in 72 hours. That was the moment I realized I had to get serious. I registered the LLC, brought on 2 part-time cleaners, and trained them using a handbook I wrote in a Google document. I systemized everything: supplies, scheduling, filming. Every cleaner had a tripod and a cleaning checklist. Content became our flywheel. By the end of year 1, Revive had done over $160,000 in revenue. Mostly couches, some rugs, a few mattresses. I was working 70 hours a week but had never felt more alive. And weirdly, this thing people considered low-skill labor was bringing me freedom. But here's the twist. When I started using AI tools to analyze my content performance, hashtags, retention rates, comment analysis, I noticed something. The most viral videos weren't always the grossest messes. They were the stories. The rescue dogs. The single dads. The grandma's old armchair brought back to life. So I pivoted the content again. Started interviewing clients. Made each job a mini documentary. Stories from the Couch became its own series. It exploded. One video got picked up by a digital media site and drove 100,000 visits to the site in a week. A venture firm actually reached out. They wanted to discuss scalable service models. I wasn't ready. Still don't know if I ever want a franchise. But that was the first time I realized I wasn't just running a cleaning company. I was running a media company that happened to clean couches. Now, 2.5 years in, Revive has 18 employees, 2 vans, and a small warehouse where we store equipment and shoot content. We service 3 cities and do between $75,000 and $90,000 a month. I pay myself well, but not crazy. We reinvest in gear, people, and production. I never thought cleaning furniture could change my life. But I also never thought failure could be the best thing that ever happened to me. If you're reading this sitting on a couch that's seen better days, maybe look at it differently. Maybe it's not just a place to sit. Maybe it's where your second chance starts. I was 22 when I decided to drop out of college to start my own business. The idea of working for someone else just never sat right with me. My parents were horrified, and honestly, I didn't really have a clear business plan at the time. But one thing I knew for sure was that I hated the thought of being trapped in a 9-to-5 job, building someone else's dream. I had a passion for tech and coding, and I thought, why not build something of my own? At that time, I was living with my parents in a small town in Ohio. They were supportive in their own way, but they definitely didn't understand my decision. Most of my friends thought I was crazy. Everyone I knew was either getting internships or focusing on their studies, while I was sitting in my bedroom trying to piece together a business model. I had no money, no mentor, and no connections, just a laptop and a burning desire to succeed. My first project was a mobile app. It was nothing revolutionary, just a simple to-do list app. But what set it apart was that it had an intuitive interface and some unique features that weren't common in other apps at the time. I worked day and night on it. I barely slept, barely ate, just coding and testing. The thing is, I didn't really know how to market it. I didn't know anything about SEO, user acquisition, or anything business-related. So, after months of work, the app launched with a whisper. Not even crickets, just silence. Nobody downloaded it. Nobody cared. It felt like all that work had been for nothing. I didn't give up, though. I took that app down and started learning. I spent hours every day on YouTube, reading blogs, and listening to podcasts. I realized that there was more to building a business than just the product. Marketing was key. Customer engagement was crucial. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was determined to figure it out. In the meantime, I took a part-time job at a local coffee shop. It wasn't glamorous, but it allowed me to keep a roof over my head and gave me the space to keep working on my project. The job also exposed me to people from all walks of life, and that's when I started talking to people about my app. The barista at the shop was a tech enthusiast, and we started chatting about business and tech. Eventually, I convinced him to be a beta tester for my app. He didn't just test the app, he also gave me some great feedback. That feedback led to updates and improvements. Slowly, the app started to get noticed by a few users. Still, it wasn't enough to make a living. It wasn't even enough to cover my coffee shop shifts. That's when I decided to pivot. I took a risk and shifted from mobile apps to web development. I felt like the market for mobile apps was saturated, and I could offer a better value proposition with web development. I put everything I had into learning front-end and back-end development, soaking up information like a sponge. There were days I spent 18 hours straight in front of my computer screen, learning new coding languages and building websites for free just to get experience. After a few months, I was ready to start charging clients. I created a simple website offering web design services and coding for small businesses. I had no portfolio to speak of, but I sent out cold emails to businesses in my area, offering my services at a low price. To my surprise, a couple of small businesses actually took me up on the offer. I was thrilled. I worked tirelessly, delivering high-quality websites, and within a few months, I had built up a small client base. As my reputation grew, I started raising my rates. It wasn't easy. Every time I raised my price, I was terrified I'd lose clients. But I stuck to my guns, and gradually my business started making more money. Still, I was working constantly, usually late into the night. But it felt different this time. I was in control. I was finally building something that was mine. After about a year of doing web development, I hit a major breakthrough. I got a project that changed everything. A medium-sized company in the city contacted me to redesign their website. It was the kind of project that could pay my rent for several months. I poured everything into it. I stayed up for nights straight, delivering the best possible work. When the clients saw the final product, they were so impressed that they referred me to 2 other clients, both of whom also paid well for my services. That's when I realized that I had something. I had a business, but it still wasn't easy. The pressure to keep growing, to meet deadlines, and to keep clients happy was intense. But I kept learning. I learned about business management, project management, and how to build a team. Slowly, I started hiring freelance developers to help with larger projects, and my revenue grew as I took on bigger clients. After 3 years of hard work, I was able to scale my business. I hired a small team of developers, project managers, and designers. I started outsourcing some of the work, so I could focus on growing the business itself. I was able to leave my part-time job at the coffee shop and work full-time on my business. Eventually, I moved out of my parents' house and into a small apartment. But the most significant change wasn't financial, it was the mental shift. I stopped worrying about failure. I stopped doubting myself. I stopped being afraid to take risks. My business was no longer just something I was doing to make a living. It became a part of who I was. I was no longer the kid in my parents' basement, struggling to make something out of nothing. I was an entrepreneur. Fast forward to today, and my business has grown beyond what I could have ever imagined. We now have clients all over the country, and I've built a strong team. The company has become profitable enough that I've been able to reinvest in other projects, including creating an online platform to help small businesses grow their presence on the web. I still face challenges every day, but I now have the skills, resources, and mindset to tackle them head-on. Looking back, I know I could have taken a safer route. I could have stayed in college, got a degree, and followed a traditional career path. But I'm glad I didn't. Taking the leap, the risk, and the sacrifice has made me who I am today. And it's that same hunger and determination that keeps me going. I know it's not easy. Entrepreneurship is tough, and you'll face many setbacks. But if you're willing to put in the hard work, learn from your mistakes, and push through the doubt, you'll get there. Just remember to keep going, even when it feels like you're not making any progress. The breakthroughs come when you least expect them. This isn't just my story. It's the story of anyone who dares to chase a dream, take a risk, and build something of their own. And if I can do it, so can you. I never imagined I'd be where I am today, running a successful tech startup with multiple employees and a growing client base. But this journey started like most others, with a dream, a little money, and a whole lot of hustle. My name is Jack, and this is the story of how I went from being a broke college dropout to building a thriving business that's changing the way people connect with technology. It all started back in 2016. I was attending a state university, studying computer science, but I was far from passionate about it. I had always been the kind of person who would get lost in side projects, hacking together apps and websites in my dorm room instead of focusing on the curriculum. It wasn't that I didn't like coding, I loved it. But the structured environment of university felt too restrictive. I wanted to build things that mattered to me, not just follow a syllabus. And so, in my second year, I dropped out. People thought I was crazy. My parents, of course, were the most vocal. They'd invested years of savings into my education and couldn't understand why I'd throw it all away. But I knew I had to follow my gut. I started coding full-time and working freelance to support myself. It wasn't glamorous. There were nights when I would be living off ramen noodles, struggling to make rent. But I didn't mind. I was doing what I loved. I knew I wanted to create something more than just another app or website. I wanted to build something that could change the world. And that's when the idea for my business first came to me. A platform that connects small businesses with custom software solutions tailored specifically to their needs. While working with local clients, I noticed a common theme. Many small businesses didn't have the resources to develop custom software. They either had to buy generic software that didn't quite fit or pay a fortune for bespoke solutions they couldn't afford. So, I set out to bridge that gap. I spent months working on the concept in my spare time, perfecting the idea and drafting business plans. I had no funding, no investors, and no connections in the industry. But I was determined. The idea was simple. I would create a platform where small businesses could get access to affordable, custom software solutions, and I'd leverage freelancers and contractors to build the software, cutting down on overhead costs. I finally launched my platform in early 2017. I spent every waking hour working on the site, reaching out to businesses, and trying to land my first clients. The first few months were brutal. I wasn't getting the traction I expected, and money was running low. I was on the verge of giving up when a local cafe owner reached out to me. She had heard about my platform and wanted help with a point-of-sale (POS) system. It was a small project, but it felt like a huge win. I built the system for her, and she was thrilled. She referred me to a few other businesses, and suddenly, I had a small client base. Word of mouth spread, and within a year, I was able to hire my first full-time employee. We worked out of my tiny apartment, building more custom software for small businesses and slowly growing our client list. But things really took off in 2019 when I made the decision to venture into the SaaS, software as a service, market. Instead of just creating custom software for each client, I started developing a suite of tools that businesses could subscribe to and use on a monthly basis. I knew it was a huge risk. Building a SaaS product takes time, and there was no guarantee that anyone would want to use it. But I believed in the idea, and I knew that recurring revenue was the key to long-term growth. I spent the next 6 months building the first version of the platform, which focused on customer relationship management, CRM, and sales automation. When we finally launched the beta version, it was met with cautious optimism. But we quickly gained traction. Small businesses love the ease of use and the affordability. The subscription model made it even more appealing as businesses didn't have to worry about massive upfront costs. By 2020, our SaaS platform was generating enough revenue to fund further development. We hired more developers, designers, and salespeople, and the company started to grow at an exponential rate. The next few years were a whirlwind, expanding the product, optimizing the user experience, and building relationships with larger clients. By 2022, we had become one of the most popular CRM platforms for small businesses, with thousands of active users. But with success came challenges. As the company grew, the culture shifted. I found myself spending more time managing people and less time coding, which was what I loved most. The stress of overseeing a large operation weighed heavily on me. I began to question whether I had made the right decision by starting the company in the first place. I missed the early days when it was just me and a small team, building something from scratch. I knew I had to make a change. So, I made the difficult decision to step back from day-to-day operations and hire a CEO to lead the company. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but it was the right one. The new CEO helped bring fresh ideas and better leadership to the company, and I was able to refocus on the technical side, working with the development team to continue improving the platform. Today, my company has over 50 employees, and we've expanded our product offerings to include everything from marketing automation to advanced analytics. We've raised a few rounds of funding, and our platform is used by thousands of businesses around the world. But even with all the success, I still remember those early days, coding late into the night, scrambling to make rent, and wondering if it would all be worth it. In many ways, I still feel like that same college dropout with a dream. I'm still learning, still growing, and still facing new challenges. But I wouldn't change a thing. The journey wasn't easy, and there were plenty of moments where I thought I'd fail. But here I am, and the business is thriving. Looking back, I realized that the key to success wasn't just about having a great idea or working hard. It was about resilience. There were times when it felt like everything was falling apart, but I kept going. I kept learning from my mistakes and pushing forward. And now, I can proudly say that the dream I once had is a reality. Hey, friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. I was a 25-year-old who had just gotten my first real office job in marketing. The kind of job people dreamed about, a 9-to-5, decent pay, benefits, and a team full of people who seemed like they had it all figured out. I remember being excited at first, but after a few months, reality hit. The work felt repetitive, the office politics were draining, and the most exciting part of my day was the coffee break. I was stuck in a routine, and I could feel the spark in me fading. Then one day, I met someone who changed everything. I was at a local coffee shop on my lunch break, as I often did, scrolling through emails on my phone, when I overheard a conversation at the table next to me. Two older gentlemen were discussing something that caught my ear, a startup they were launching, and the challenges of getting it off the ground. I'm not someone who usually eavesdrops, but something about their energy drew me in. They weren't speaking in technical jargon or discussing things I couldn't understand. They were talking about the sheer hustle, the grind, and the need to innovate. I couldn't help but ask them what their startup was about, and that's how I met Ryan and Thomas. Ryan was in his early 40s and had a background in tech. Thomas was in his mid-50s, a former corporate executive who had walked away from the high-paying job to follow his passion for sustainable business. They had teamed up to launch a platform that connected small-scale farmers with urban consumers looking for organic produce. Their mission wasn't just to sell vegetables. It was to change the food industry by creating a sustainable supply chain that benefited both producers and consumers. They were so passionate about their vision, and I was drawn to it immediately. They saw my interest and invited me to their office for a more in-depth conversation. At the time, I thought, why not? What do I have to lose? I was tired of the corporate grind, and the idea of doing something more meaningful was incredibly appealing. When I got to their office, it was nothing like the sleek, polished buildings I was used to. It was a small, cramped space with just a few desks, some whiteboards covered in brainstorming ideas, and a sense of raw ambition that I hadn't felt in months. Ryan and Thomas explained their vision in detail, and I was hooked. I asked if they needed help with marketing, and without hesitation, they offered me a role. I didn't even ask about salary or benefits. I just knew I had to be part of this journey. I handed in my resignation a week later. My first month with the startup was a whirlwind. I went from a steady job with predictable tasks to constantly juggling new challenges. We were a small team, and there was so much to do. I was the only one handling marketing, and I found myself working late into the night, crafting social media campaigns, writing blog posts, and reaching out to influencers in the sustainable food space. I had never worked this hard in my life, but it didn't feel like work. Every victory, no matter how small, felt like a step towards something bigger. The real challenge came when we launched our platform. We had put in months of work, but our first week of sales was dismal. We were getting attention, but not enough conversions. The platform had a great mission, but we had no brand recognition. People weren't trusting us enough to make the switch from their usual grocery stores to buying organic produce from a new startup. I felt like we were swimming against the tide. But Ryan and Thomas didn't give up. They were relentless. Ryan spent hours researching the competition and tweaking the user experience, while Thomas worked on building partnerships with more farmers and vendors. We didn't have a big marketing budget, so we had to get creative. We began offering free trials and using guerrilla marketing tactics, posting flyers in coffee shops, reaching out to local influencers for shout-outs, and partnering with environmental organizations to spread the word. Slowly but surely, things started to pick up. We gained more traction as word of mouth spread. People who tried our service were genuinely impressed with the quality of the produce and the ethical sourcing behind it. We started receiving emails from customers thanking us for offering a better alternative to the mass-produced, pesticide-laden food they were used to buying at big box stores. The small victories began to add up. By the end of the first year, we had grown beyond our wildest expectations. We had tripled our customer base, expanded into new cities, and secured partnerships with larger eco-conscious brands. We were no longer just a small startup. We were a force to be reckoned with in the sustainable food industry. But the real turning point came when we landed a feature in a major sustainability magazine. The article highlighted our mission, our growth, and our commitment to making a difference. It was the kind of publicity we couldn't have bought with any amount of money. After that, our platform exploded. We began attracting investors who believed in our vision, and soon we had the funding to expand even further. The next few years were a blur. We hired a larger team, moved into a bigger office, and became the go-to platform for people looking for sustainable, organic produce. We had taken on a life of its own, and I couldn't believe it. The kid who had been stuck in a corporate job, dreaming of something more, was now leading a rapidly growing company with a clear mission and a passionate team behind it. Looking back, I often wonder what would have happened if I hadn't overheard that conversation at the coffee shop. What if I had stayed in my safe, predictable office job and never taken the leap? It's hard to say, but I'm grateful every day that I took the risk. The journey wasn't easy. It was filled with sleepless nights, setbacks, and moments where I thought we might not make it. But through it all, I learned that success doesn't come from following a straight path. It comes from taking risks, staying persistent, and never losing sight of your vision. As I sit in our new headquarters, surrounded by a team of passionate individuals who believe in what we're doing, I realized that the grind wasn't just about building a business. It was about building something that mattered. And to me, that's the real definition of success. This is the story of how I went from being a broke, struggling student with a pile of debt to building a successful business in less than 5 years. It wasn't easy, and there were plenty of moments when I thought I wouldn't make it. But if you're interested in how a nobody like me turned it all around, here it is. It all started when I was 23 years old, living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment with a huge student loan hanging over me. I had just graduated from college with a degree in business administration, but the reality was that the job market was brutal. The economy was still recovering from the 2008 financial crisis, and there were more grads than there were jobs. After a few months of sending out hundreds of resumes and getting no callbacks, I decided to do something drastic. I had always been interested in entrepreneurship, but I never thought I could pull it off. Who was I? Just another broke college grad with no experience and no connections. But then one night, I was talking to my friend Jake at a local bar. Jake was a few years older than me, and we had become close over the last year. He was a graphic designer who had started his own freelancing business a few years ago, and he was doing pretty well. As we were chatting, I complained about how impossible it seemed to break into the business world. "You're never going to make it working for someone else," Jake said, his eyes lighting up. "You've got to take risks. Start something yourself. You've got the drive, I can see that." I remember feeling a mix of inspiration and fear. Could I really start something on my own? I didn't have money, experience, or even a solid idea. But Jake kept pushing, and I started thinking, what was the worst that could happen? I was already broke. There wasn't much to lose. The next day, I started doing some research. I knew I didn't have the skills to create a tech startup or anything too complex. But I was a quick learner, and I had always been good with people. Then it hit me. What if I started a business around something simple that everyone needed? What about a cleaning service? I know it sounds cliché now, but I realized that people would always need their homes and offices cleaned. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady work. And best of all, it was something I could start with almost no capital. I could get cleaning supplies, create a basic website, and start offering my services. I didn't need a huge office or employees to start, just a phone and a reliable car. I remember feeling a mix of excitement and terror as I made my first steps. I put together a basic website in a couple of days and threw together some flyers with basic services and pricing. I spent the next week passing them out to anyone who would listen, mostly neighbors, small businesses, and even some real estate agents. At first, things were slow. I got a couple of clients, but it wasn't enough to sustain me. I remember feeling frustrated after the first month when I had only earned a few $100. I had bills piling up, and I was still living paycheck to paycheck from my part-time job. But I kept at it. I kept calling leads, pushing flyers, and knocking on doors. Slowly, things began to pick up. One of my clients recommended me to a friend, and then that friend recommended me to another. I went from cleaning 1 or 2 houses a week to 5 or 6, and then more. In the first year, I made just enough to cover my bills and invest a little back into the business. I used the money to hire a part-time assistant to help with scheduling and paperwork, which freed up my time to focus on growing the business. That was a game changer. My evenings were now spent networking and refining my business model. By the second year, I had enough clients to justify hiring a small team of cleaners. I invested in better equipment and expanded my services to include office cleaning. I also started running Google Ads and creating more targeted marketing strategies. The business was finally picking up speed, and I felt like I was on the cusp of something bigger. But that didn't mean it was easy. There were setbacks. One of my employees accidentally damaged a client's property, and I had to deal with the fallout. Another time, I lost a big client to a competitor who undercut my prices. I learned the hard way that in business, nothing is guaranteed. You have to be adaptable and resilient. In the third year, I decided to take a big risk and hire a full-time manager to oversee operations. This was a huge leap because it meant I had to give up some control. But I realized I couldn't scale my business while being bogged down with every tiny detail. With the manager in place, I could focus on strategic growth. We expanded into new neighborhoods and hired more cleaners. I also rebranded the company and upgraded the website. At this point, my business was no longer just a side hustle. It was a full-fledged company, and we were making real money. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There were late nights, missed opportunities, and moments when I wanted to give up. The key, though, was persistence. I had always been willing to work harder than anyone else, and that mentality had gotten me this far. By the fourth year, the business was profitable enough that I was able to take a salary, and I could finally pay off my student loans. But more than that, I had built something real, a company that could survive without me at the helm. And that's when I realized I had crossed a threshold. The business was no longer just about making money. It was about creating something that would last, something that would provide jobs, and help people in ways I never imagined. Today, I run a successful cleaning company with over 40 employees and multiple locations. We service hundreds of clients every month, from small businesses to large corporations. My company has expanded into new services, including deep cleaning and green cleaning solutions, and we're constantly finding ways to innovate. Looking back, it's still surreal to think about how far I've come. I went from a broke student with no prospects to owning a successful business, all because I decided to take a risk and pursue something that scared me. I'm still learning every day, and the challenges don't stop, but I'm proud of what I've built. So, if you're sitting there reading this, wondering if you should take the leap, my advice is simple. Just do it. Don't wait for the perfect moment or for everything to fall into place. It never will. Take small steps, be consistent, and keep learning. It's not about luck. It's about persistence and hard work. If I can do it, so can you. I was just 24 when I found myself staring down at my bank account with nothing but a few $100 left. I had just quit my job at a tech startup where I had worked for almost 2 years, and while I had learned a lot, I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere by continuing to climb the corporate ladder. I had this burning idea that wouldn't let me sleep at night. A lot of people told me I was crazy to leave a stable job in Silicon Valley, but I had this feeling deep down that my shot at success was waiting outside of the traditional 9 to 5 grind. It all started when I realized how much money was being spent on custom packaging in the e-commerce space. Every time I ordered something online, whether it was clothes, gadgets, or even a simple book, I noticed that the packaging often felt like a waste. A lot of it was overdone and not eco-friendly. I felt like there was an opportunity to step in and create a business that provided sustainable and custom packaging for small businesses who cared about the environment. I had no background in packaging. I wasn't a designer, nor did I have a network in the packaging industry, but I figured if I could create a product that made it easier for businesses to feel good about their environmental impact, maybe I could build something worthwhile. The first few weeks were rough. I didn't know where to start, so I began by researching sustainable materials and packaging trends and studying the competition. I learned a lot of basic things like the difference between biodegradable plastic and recycled cardboard, but I also realized how complicated and fragmented the industry was. My initial plan was simple. I would offer eco-friendly packaging that was both customizable and affordable. I figured that small businesses who were conscious about their environmental footprint would love the option to design their packaging without spending a fortune. I started by designing a small website and built an online store. I had no idea what I was doing, but I did my best to learn everything from web development to marketing through online courses, YouTube tutorials, and reading tons of articles. After a couple of weeks, I was ready to launch. I had no investors, no capital to speak of, and no business experience, just a dream and some passion. My website went live, and I posted about my business on my personal social media channels. At first, the response was crickets. No one seemed to care. I think most people didn't take me seriously. After all, I was a 24-year-old kid trying to disrupt an entire industry that I barely understood. But I wasn't discouraged. I continued to learn, refine my business model, and find ways to market myself. Slowly, things started to change. The turning point came when I partnered with a small local clothing store that was looking for packaging that aligned with their brand's sustainable ethos. They were hesitant at first, but I was persistent. I offered them a custom package design and gave them a significant discount for being my first customer. They loved it. Their customers loved it. They even posted about it on Instagram, and suddenly, my small business started to gain traction. From there, things took off. I reached out to more small businesses in various niches, clothing, beauty, food, and health, and kept pushing the message that eco-friendly packaging could be both affordable and high quality. I spent hours calling potential clients, emailing them, and trying to build relationships with as many people as possible. I also hired a freelance graphic designer to help with creating more appealing designs. As I scaled, I learned the importance of managing costs, shipping logistics, and customer service. Every order, no matter how small, was a learning experience. Within 6 months, I had made enough to hire a small team. We grew from just me and my cramped apartment to a 5-person operation. We started manufacturing the packaging ourselves, cutting out middlemen, which allowed us to save money and offer even better prices to our clients. Along the way, I also began building stronger relationships with my suppliers, which helped us get better deals on materials. I even invested in eco-friendly machinery to further improve our environmental impact. But just when I thought things were going well, I ran into my first big obstacle. One of our largest clients, a subscription box company, stopped ordering. Their business had been hit hard by the pandemic, and they needed to cut back on costs. This was a blow, as they were responsible for a significant chunk of my revenue. I remember sitting in my office, staring at the numbers, trying to figure out how to move forward. It was a tough time, but I didn't give up. I pivoted. Instead of focusing exclusively on packaging for small businesses, I started to expand our product offerings. I introduced branded reusable bags, sustainable mailers, and other green products that could be bundled with the packaging. This allowed me to appeal to larger brands who were looking to reduce their carbon footprint. I also started offering consulting services for businesses on how to transition to more sustainable practices, from packaging to supply chain management. By the end of the year, we were making a profit. It wasn't much at first, but it was a start. I reinvested everything back into the business, hiring more people, expanding our product line, and improving our website. I also began focusing on building a strong brand identity, which helped differentiate us from the competition. Our message was clear. We were not just selling packaging. We were helping businesses make a positive impact on the planet. Now, 5 years later, my company is one of the leading providers of sustainable and customizable packaging in the e-commerce space. We've worked with over 2,000 clients, ranging from small local brands to large companies, and we've helped them transition to more eco-friendly packaging solutions. I never imagined this would be my life, but here I am, running a multi-million-dollar business, traveling the world, and making a real impact on the environment. Looking back, I can't believe how far I've come. The journey wasn't easy. I made countless mistakes along the way, but each one taught me a valuable lesson. There were times when I doubted myself, when I felt like giving up, but I always kept pushing forward. The key to success wasn't just having a good idea. It was the persistence to keep going even when it seemed impossible. I guess the moral of the story is that success doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, effort, and a lot of failures before you find the right formula. But if you have a passion for something, if you believe in your idea, And if you're willing to work harder than anyone else, you can turn your dreams into reality. Today, I'm still passionate about sustainability, and I've made it my mission to help other businesses think more consciously about their environmental impact. I've built a life that I'm proud of, and I'm grateful for the journey. It wasn't easy, but it was worth every sacrifice. If you're reading this and wondering if you should take the leap, whether it's starting a business, leaving your job, or pursuing a dream, my advice is simple: go for it. You never know where it could take you. Sometimes, the biggest risks lead to the most rewarding rewards. I never planned on becoming an entrepreneur. In fact, if you had told me a decade ago that I would own my own business, I would have laughed and probably said something along the lines of, "That's for other people, not for me." But here I am today, the owner of a thriving online store, and my journey to this point was anything but conventional. It all started back in 2015. I was 25 years old, working a decent job as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized tech firm. I liked my work. Well, I liked the paycheck, and the benefits were great, but I never felt fulfilled. Every day felt like I was just going through the motions, living for the weekends and dreaming of something bigger. I had ideas, lots of them, but no real plan on how to pursue them. One day, after yet another uninspiring meeting with my boss, I was scrolling through Instagram when I stumbled upon an ad for a course on starting an online business. It was one of those courses promising to teach you how to make money while you slept, using a proven, step-by-step formula. I'd seen these kinds of ads before, but for some reason, this one hit differently. Maybe I was just at a point in my life where I was craving change, or maybe I was just bored. Either way, I clicked. The course was expensive, way more than I would normally spend on anything non-essential. But in a moment of spontaneous decision-making, which, looking back, was probably one of the best decisions I ever made, I pulled the trigger. I took the plunge and signed up. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I had to start somewhere. The first few weeks of the course were overwhelming. The instructor, a guy named Jason, gave us tons of information: how to identify a profitable niche, how to set up an online store, how to find suppliers, and most importantly, how to market our products. It all sounded so simple on paper, but when it came to applying the concepts, I found myself stumbling. I had no background in e-commerce, and I didn't even know where to start with building a website. But I kept at it, watching the videos, taking notes, and applying the lessons bit by bit. I decided to go with a niche that I thought had potential: custom phone accessories. I had noticed that personalized items were gaining popularity, and I figured there had to be a market for high-quality, unique phone cases and chargers. It was a crowded market, but I figured if I could carve out my own space and offer products that stood out, I might be able to build something. I spent weeks designing the website. It was far from perfect, and I'm sure if I looked at it today, I would cringe at how amateur it looked. But at the time, it was a labor of love. I remember the moment I finally clicked the Publish button on my store. I was terrified. What if no one bought anything? What if I had just wasted a ton of money on this course and this website? But then, the unthinkable happened. A few days after launching, I received my first order. It was a custom phone case, nothing fancy, just a simple design with a quote. I remember running around my apartment, showing my friends the confirmation email. I was on cloud nine. It was proof that I could actually do this. That one sale sparked something inside me, and I was hooked. I spent the next few weeks perfecting my store, researching new products, and learning everything I could about marketing. At first, things were slow. I barely made enough money to cover the costs of running the website and buying the products. But I didn't give up. I kept experimenting with different strategies: paid ads, Instagram giveaways, influencer partnerships. Slowly but surely, I started seeing more traffic to my site, and the sales began to trickle in. The first year was a struggle. There were so many late nights, moments of doubt, and mistakes I made that cost me both time and money. I remember one month where I spent all my savings on a huge ad campaign, only to see it flop completely. I was devastated. But I learned. I learned that not every ad would work, not every strategy would pay off, but the key was to keep trying and pivoting until something clicked. By year 2, things started to shift. My brand had a small but loyal following on social media, and I started getting regular sales. I focused more on building my brand identity, and I learned how to work with suppliers to offer better margins. I even started hiring freelancers to help with design and customer service. But what really changed everything was when I found the right influencer to partner with. She had a following of over 500K on Instagram, and her audience was exactly what I needed: young, trendy, and always on the lookout for unique products. The influencer promotion was a game changer. My sales skyrocketed, and I started seeing the type of growth I had only dreamed of. Fast forward to today, and my business is doing better than I ever imagined. I'm no longer working my corporate job, and I have a team of 5 people who help run the day-to-day operations. We've expanded from custom phone accessories to a full line of personalized tech gadgets, and we even have a few brick-and-mortar pop-up shops that we run a couple of times a year. Every day, I wake up excited to work on my business. The passion I once felt was a fleeting thought, but now it's the very thing that drives me. Looking back, I can't help but think about the many moments when I almost gave up. The times when I thought this whole entrepreneurship thing wasn't for me, when I doubted myself and my abilities. But I've learned that success in business is about persistence, resilience, and the willingness to keep going even when things seem impossible. Entrepreneurship isn't some magical, overnight journey. It's a grind, but it's also one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. And for anyone out there who is thinking about starting their own business, my advice is simple: just start. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to have a perfect plan, but you do need to take that first step. You'll learn along the way, and if you keep going, you'll find your way to success. It's not easy, but I promise it's worth it. I didn't start with any special skills or resources, but I've built something I'm proud of. You can do the same. So, to anyone out there thinking about making that leap into entrepreneurship, my message is clear: take the risk, learn as you go, and never stop pushing forward. It may take longer than you think, but in the end, you'll be glad you did. I never thought I'd be here, writing this. To be honest, I used to be the type of person who laughed at the idea of making it big in business. I was stuck in a regular 9-to-5 job that I hated, but I had a solid paycheck, health insurance, and some vacation days. What more could a guy like me ask for? But I quickly learned that my comfort zone was a prison, and I had to break free if I ever wanted to truly live. It all started a few years ago when I was 28. I had been working in marketing for a tech company for about 5 years. The money was good, but the work was soul-sucking. I'd wake up at 7 a.m., drag myself into the office, pretend to care about the latest trends in SEO and PPC, and then go home, rinse and repeat. Sure, I had weekends to relax, but when your entire life is focused on just getting through the next workday, it's hard to enjoy anything. One day, I was sitting in a meeting with my boss, who was asking me to work on a few new ideas to boost our engagement metrics. It was the usual vague instruction that meant, figure it out and make it look like you're doing something. I hated that feeling. I was tired of being told what to do with no real sense of purpose. I decided that day, right there in that meeting, that I wasn't going to keep following the same routine. I had a little side hustle I'd been tinkering with for the past year: dropshipping. I know, every person with an Instagram ad is probably running a dropshipping store these days. But my story is a bit different. I didn't start with some grand vision of making millions. I started because I needed something to focus on outside of work. Something that could be mine, something that was real and not just numbers on a screen. My first few months were brutal. I didn't know what I was doing. I spent countless hours researching suppliers, setting up a website, and trying to market products I thought were cool. And guess what? I made a total of $60 in sales in the first month. The second month wasn't much better. I lost more money on ads than I made in sales, and I was starting to doubt myself. Everyone around me was telling me to quit. They said things like, "It's just a hobby, why waste your time? And don't throw your life away chasing dreams that aren't going to work." But I couldn't let go of it. I kept learning. I read books, watched videos, and listened to podcasts from successful entrepreneurs who had started just like me, doing something small, making mistakes, and grinding their way to success. Slowly but surely, things started to click. One of the biggest turning points for me came when I decided to really niche down. I'd been trying to sell everything from t-shirts to random gadgets, but I wasn't standing out. I needed to figure out who my ideal customer was and what their pain points were. After weeks of testing different ideas, I discovered that a specific group of people was looking for a certain type of product that I could provide. It wasn't the hottest, most trendy product, but it was something people wanted, and I could do it better than the competition. I spent a lot of time perfecting my brand story. I realized that in this day and age, people don't just want products, they want to connect with a brand that shares their values. I positioned my store as one that focused on quality, customer service, and a personal connection with buyers. I began sharing my story on social media, telling people about my journey, the struggles, the small wins, and how this business was my escape from the corporate grind. That's when things started to change. Sales slowly started to trickle in, and I was excited again. But the big breakthrough came when I invested in scaling my paid ads properly. I had been testing for months, but I finally understood how to target the right audience with the right message. I spent money on ads, and this time, it worked. I began making $100 a day, then $200, and then, after a few more tweaks, $500 a day. It felt unreal. I was starting to make more money with my side hustle than I had ever made in my full-time job. I still wasn't ready to quit my job, though. I was making good money on the side, but it wasn't enough to fully support myself just yet. I wanted to be smart about it. I kept my job, but I was working on my business late into the nights and on weekends. I was putting in the work and learning more about scaling, outsourcing, and automating my processes. After about a year of intense effort, my online store hit $10,000 in monthly sales. I remember that day like it was yesterday. I sat there, staring at my screen in disbelief. I had worked so hard for this moment, and now it was real. But with success came new challenges. I had to figure out how to handle customer support, inventory, shipping, and all the other logistics that came with running a growing business. I was wearing all the hats: marketer, salesperson, customer service rep, and tech support. It got overwhelming, and there were days when I felt like quitting. But the more I grew, the more I realized that every entrepreneur faces these struggles. The difference between those who succeed and those who fail isn't how hard the work is, but how long they're willing to push through the tough times. Eventually, I made the decision to leave my job. I was making enough money with my business to fully support myself, and I felt confident that I had built something sustainable. I was terrified, but also excited. That moment was surreal, walking out of the office for the last time, knowing that I was free. Today, I run a six-figure business. I've been able to travel the world, spend more time with my family, and create a life that I love. My story isn't one of instant success. It's a tale of failure, doubt, and perseverance. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that success isn't about how many times you get knocked down. It's about how many times you get up and keep going. I know I'm just one person among millions who have taken this journey, but I want to tell anyone who's thinking about starting something for themselves, if I can do it, so can you. It won't be easy. It will be the hardest thing you've ever done, but it will be worth it. If you're stuck in a job you hate, or if you feel like there's more out there for you, take the leap. It's not about having all the answers up front. It's about taking the first step, because that's where it all begins. I'll never forget the day I decided to take the leap into entrepreneurship. It wasn't some grand vision or an inspiring aha moment, like you hear in motivational speeches. No, it was more of a desperate, last-ditch effort to turn my life around. To give you some context, let me rewind a bit. I had always been the kid who dreamed big but never really got around to making it happen. I was the typical college student, chasing grades, spending too much time in bars, and figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. I went through the motions, got a degree in communications because it was the safest choice, and ended up working a 9-to-5 job at a mid-sized marketing agency right out of school. It was fine, comfortable, even, but after a couple of years, I started feeling suffocated. I was stuck in an office, doing work that didn't challenge me. The pay wasn't bad, but I knew I wasn't getting closer to my dreams. Then, everything changed in the span of 1 week. It started when I got laid off. The agency I worked for had just undergone a major restructuring, and suddenly, there were more redundant positions than we had employees. It didn't matter that I was a solid performer. In the corporate world, sometimes things just don't align, and you're the one who's left without a chair when the music stops. My boss called me into a conference room, told me the news, and handed me a severance check. At first, I was in shock, numb to the whole situation. But as soon as I stepped out of that room, something inside me clicked. This wasn't the end of my career. This was the beginning of something new. For the first time in a long while, I had no safety net. No office to show up to every day. No paycheck to depend on. It was terrifying, but it was also liberating. The idea of starting my own business had always been a distant thought in the back of my mind. It had always seemed like an unattainable goal, something reserved for people with deep pockets, experience, and the perfect timing. But I had none of those things. I was broke, inexperienced, and in my mid-20s. Yet, I had one thing that could make all the difference: time. For the next few days, I didn't waste any time feeling sorry for myself. I took a deep breath and started researching. I scrolled through countless articles, read books, watched webinars, anything I could find that would teach me how to start a business. I needed something that could give me some kind of advantage in this crazy world of entrepreneurship. I realized there was a gap in the market for a certain kind of digital marketing service. Specifically, businesses needed affordable and high-quality content, but couldn't afford to hire full-time staff or outsource to expensive agencies. That's when it hit me. I could offer content creation services on a freelance basis. I didn't need to reinvent the wheel. I didn't need an office or investors. I just needed my laptop, a solid internet connection, and the willingness to hustle. I registered a simple domain, set up a website using a drag-and-drop builder, and began building my portfolio. At first, it was slow. I had no reputation, no clients, and no experience. I started reaching out to small businesses, offering them discounted rates in exchange for testimonials and referrals. It was a grind. I spent hours sending cold emails, making phone calls, and doing anything I could to get my foot in the door. I was working around the clock, nights, weekends, you name it. The hustle was real. But over time, things began to click. I started getting repeat clients. Word-of-mouth referrals began to trickle in. The work got more challenging, but it also got more rewarding. I realized I wasn't just helping businesses with their content, I was helping them grow, and that felt incredible. A year into this journey, I hit my first six-figure revenue year. I couldn't believe it. Here I was, just a kid who had been laid off and was now running my own business, making more money than I ever had in my corporate job. But this wasn't a fluke. I had put in the work. Every cold email, every late-night project, every no I heard from potential clients, it all led to this moment. But with success came new challenges. I was getting too many clients and not enough time to serve them all. I had to make a decision, grow or stay small. I chose to grow. I hired a small team of freelance writers and designers to help me scale my operations. I invested in tools that would automate certain processes and make my life easier. I raised my prices, took on larger clients, and started to position myself as a premium service in my niche. Over the next few years, my business expanded beyond what I ever thought was possible. I went from being a solo freelancer to running a full-fledged digital marketing agency with a team of 15 employees. We were working with clients all over the world, from local mom-and-pop shops to large corporations. It was hard, really hard. There were days when I felt like I couldn't keep up. There were moments when I questioned whether I could handle it all. But every time I faced a setback, I reminded myself of where I started, how far I had come from that first layoff, how desperate I was to make something of myself. Now, looking back, I don't regret a single moment of the journey. The late nights, the constant hustle, the sacrifices, it was all worth it. I built something from nothing, and I'm proud of what I've achieved. But more than that, I've learned that entrepreneurship isn't just about making money or achieving success. It's about resilience. It's about figuring out what you want, taking risks, and being willing to fail and then getting back up and trying again. It's a grind, no doubt, but it's also the most rewarding experience of my life. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's this. You don't need to have all the answers, and you don't need to wait for the perfect moment. Start where you are, with what you have, and be willing to put in the work. If I can do it, anyone can. I started my business in a cramped apartment with a dream and an old laptop. I had no formal training, no connections, and certainly no money. All I had was a vision. I wanted to create something that could help people, something that was sustainable, something that could grow. I was working a 9-to-5 job, barely scraping by, but every moment I wasn't at work, I was thinking about my business. I was obsessed. It all started when I noticed something that had been bothering me for a long time. As a regular consumer of beauty and skincare products, I couldn't help but notice how many of them were filled with ingredients I couldn't even pronounce. I began to question how they were made and what they were really doing to my skin. I wasn't alone in this, either. Many people I knew had the same concerns. There was a growing demand for natural and organic products, and no one seemed to be fully meeting that demand. That's when I had an idea. What if I could make a line of skincare products that were not only natural but effective? No fillers, no harmful chemicals, just pure ingredients from nature. At first, I didn't know the first thing about creating skincare products. I started researching. Late nights, early mornings. I spent hours on forums, reading articles, and watching YouTube videos. I talked to people who had experience in the field, even cold calling manufacturers and asking endless questions. It was grueling, but it was exciting. I felt like I was uncovering a hidden world, one I wanted to be a part of. With no money for fancy labs or marketing campaigns, I had to get creative. I began sourcing raw ingredients from local suppliers. I made the products myself in my kitchen. I tested every formula on myself and my friends. Every batch was trial and error. Some products worked wonders, and others, not so much. But each failure was a learning opportunity. Every time something went wrong, I adjusted and tried again. It wasn't glamorous. There were nights I'd be in my kitchen, covered in oils and powders, trying to figure out the right balance. There were moments when I felt like giving up, when I thought no one would ever take me seriously. But the thought of creating something meaningful kept me going. I knew it wouldn't be easy, and I knew it wouldn't happen overnight. But I was willing to put in the work. The first product I launched was a simple face scrub. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was made with ingredients I knew would appeal to people who wanted something simple and pure. I didn't have a big budget for marketing, so I relied on word of mouth and social media. I set up an Instagram account, took photos of the scrub, which, let's be honest, weren't great at first, and started following people in the beauty space. At first, it felt like no one was listening. I'd get a few likes here and there, but nothing that would make me believe I was onto something big. I was frustrated. The pressure from my day job was piling up, and the money I had invested in the products was running out. I wasn't sure if I was ever going to make it. But then, something changed. One day, a small influencer, someone with only a few thousand followers, posted a picture of herself using my scrub. She loved it. She raved about how smooth her skin felt, how natural the ingredients were, how much she trusted the brand. The next day, my Instagram inbox blew up. People started asking where they could buy the scrub. I didn't have an e-commerce site yet, so I scrambled to set one up. Within a week, I had my first sale. From there, things snowballed. The more people tried my products, the more they shared them. As my following grew, so did my product line. I started creating moisturizers, face masks, and serums, all made with the same natural ingredients I had started with. Every new product felt like a victory, but it wasn't just about making money. It was about knowing that I was helping people take better care of their skin, that I was providing something they could trust. As the business grew, I hit more and more challenges. Keeping up with demand was tough. I had to hire my first employees, but I couldn't afford to pay them much at first. I was doing everything: product development, marketing, shipping, customer service. I remember staying up for 48 hours straight during the first holiday season, just to make sure all the orders were processed on time. I was exhausted, but I felt alive. It felt like everything I had worked for was coming together. But success doesn't come without setbacks. There were moments when I felt like I was losing control. I had to make tough decisions, like whether to invest in expanding the product line or keep everything small and manageable. There were suppliers who couldn't meet the demand, and manufacturers who made mistakes on large batches. I had a few products that had to be pulled from shelves due to quality issues, and each time it felt like I had failed. But I learned quickly that mistakes were part of the journey. I wasn't perfect, and neither was my business. But as long as I kept working hard and being honest with my customers, I would be okay. Now, 5 years later, my brand has grown beyond my wildest dreams. We've expanded into hair care, wellness products, and even home cleaning products, all based on the same principles of natural ingredients and sustainability. My team has grown, and I've moved from that tiny apartment kitchen to a proper facility with an amazing team of passionate people. We have an office, a warehouse, and even a research lab. What started as a one-woman operation is now a full-fledged business with a loyal following of customers who trust us. Looking back, I realized that the most important thing I did was simply start. I had no idea what I was doing at first. I didn't know if it would work, but I believed in the idea. And as the business grew, I grew too. I learned so much about resilience, about being patient, and about how important it is to keep pushing even when it feels like things aren't working. There's no shortcut to success, and it doesn't happen overnight. But if you're willing to put in the time and effort, if you're willing to fail and get back up, the results can be incredible. I'm not sure where this journey will take me, but I'm excited to keep growing. And maybe, just maybe, my story will inspire someone else to take that first step, just like I did. The unlikely journey, from $20 to multi-million-dollar business a few years ago, I was just another college dropout working at a dead-end job in a local coffee shop. I wasn't even sure what I wanted to do with my life. I had dreams of making it big, but I didn't know how. My days consisted of serving overpriced lattes to customers who barely noticed me, while I daydreamed about success stories of entrepreneurs who seemed to have it all figured out. I had no savings, no connections, and certainly no business experience. I felt like I was wasting my life away. One day, a regular customer who came in every morning for his black coffee sat down and started talking to me. He was an older guy in his 50s, dressed in a sharp suit, and carrying himself with an air of confidence I didn't quite understand at the time. His name was Michael, and after some small talk, we started having deeper conversations. He'd ask me about my goals, my passions, and what I saw for my future. At first, I shrugged it off, but as days turned into weeks, I started opening up to him more. "Why are you working here if you're so smart?" he once asked, sipping his coffee with a curious look in his eyes. "I don't really know," I replied, feeling embarrassed. "I guess I don't have any better options." He smiled and said something that would stick with me forever. "You've got potential, but you need to get serious about it. A job won't make you rich, but learning to create value will." At the time, I didn't know what he meant, but something in me clicked. Michael was a self-made entrepreneur, and over the following months, he became a mentor of sorts, teaching me about business, marketing, and, most importantly, the mindset of a successful entrepreneur. He showed me how to think beyond my small bubble and take risks. I was working at the coffee shop, scraping by with barely enough to pay rent, when Michael told me about an opportunity to invest in a side project. It was a low-cost, high-reward venture that involved selling custom-designed t-shirts online. The catch? I only had $20 to my name, but I felt inspired, so I decided to take the plunge. I didn't have the luxury of a big investment, but I had the willingness to learn. I spent hours researching the t-shirt business, studying the latest trends, and learning how to create designs using free graphic design tools. I used my limited savings to buy a few blank t-shirts and a basic heat press machine from a local supplier. The entire setup cost me $19.99, leaving me with just a penny to spare. I didn't know much about marketing, but I did know how to use social media. I started posting my designs on Instagram, Facebook, and even Reddit, sharing them with friends and followers. To my surprise, I got my first order within a week, a t-shirt featuring a design I had made myself. It wasn't a huge sale, but it was enough to get the ball rolling. That first customer left a glowing review, which helped me get a second order, then a third, and so on. I started reinvesting the profits into my business, upgrading my equipment, and expanding my product line. I reached out to influencers who had a following in niches that aligned with my designs and paid them small amounts of money to promote my shirts. Slowly but surely, my sales began to grow. I wasn't making much money yet, but the sense of accomplishment was enough to keep me going. I started treating my side project like a real business, not just a hobby. A few months in, I noticed a pattern. People were buying my t-shirts for special events, bachelor parties, birthday parties, and even corporate gifts. I saw an opportunity to pivot and make custom-designed shirts tailored to specific events. This shift in focus led to a massive surge in sales. By the end of my first year, I was making a profit of $1,000 per month, which was enough to quit my coffee shop job and focus on my business full-time. Over the next couple of years, I scaled up. I hired a small team to help with order fulfillment, customer service, and design work. I invested in better equipment and started outsourcing some of the production to trusted manufacturers. I built my brand around high-quality, unique, and personalized t-shirts, offering fast turnaround times and exceptional customer service. But the real turning point came when I decided to launch a website. It wasn't just an online store. I built a platform where customers could design their own t-shirts. They could upload photos, add text, and create something entirely personalized for themselves or for an event. This feature made my business stand out from others in the market, and within a year, traffic to my website exploded. I started getting hundreds of orders a day, and my revenue skyrocketed. Despite the growth, I faced numerous challenges. There were months when my cash flow was tight, and I struggled with inventory management. I had to learn everything from managing a team to optimizing my website for search engines. There were sleepless nights, countless failures, and moments when I felt like giving up. But I pushed through, learning from every mistake and continuing to refine my approach. One of the key lessons I learned was the importance of customer feedback. I made it a point to listen to my customers, implement their suggestions, and improve my products based on their needs. As a result, I built a loyal customer base that kept coming back. Fast forward to today, and my business is no longer just a small side hustle. I've turned it into a multi-million-dollar company with a team of over 50 people working across multiple departments. We ship products worldwide and have expanded into other merchandise categories, such as mugs, hats, and hoodies. Our website attracts millions of visitors each month, and we've worked with some major brands for custom merchandise collaborations. Looking back, it's hard to believe how far I've come. From $20 and a coffee shop job to running a global business, my journey has been filled with ups and downs, but it's all been worth it. Michael's advice to focus on creating value, learning, and taking risks was the foundation of everything. I didn't have the connections or resources at the start, but I had the drive and willingness to learn, and that made all the difference. Now, I try to give back by mentoring aspiring entrepreneurs, just as Michael did for me. I remind them that success isn't about starting with a big bankroll. It's about the mindset and the ability to keep going when things get tough. Anyone can build something incredible, no matter where they start. I'm living proof of that. The dream isn't just for the lucky few. It's for anyone who's willing to work hard and take the first step. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.